So, to all Bangladeshi missions abroad, this is an official document by email from the Foreign Secretary to heads of missions. And I'm just going to highlight what he is saying to the official diplomats as well as Awami League supporters and members. I'm sure all of you are doing your best to use these materials as appropriate. However, the ministry would be happy to receive your specific feedback, among others, on the following points. Whether you could reach the host government to brief on the current situation in Bangladesh. What was their initial reaction, if any? What can we do more to convince of the events taking place in Bangladesh? Is there any local media reports on the issue, and whether any negative narratives on the situation in Bangladesh? Whether mission attempted to engage editors, sub-editors, desk reporters to portray the real scenario on the ground? Is there any demonstrations in support of the student quota reform movement, either in your host country or accredited country? Are there any local think tanks or civil society organizations that are willing to give a lending ear to what's happening, what's truly happening in Bangladesh? Now we get into the interesting bits. Whether local diaspora who are favorably disposed have been discreetly utilized to boost counter-narratives among the local diaspora. The main challenge seems to be controlling the narratives in social media. X, WhatsApp, YouTube, Facebook. If there is any effective way to tackle this, please share this with us. This is the Foreign Secretary. Yeah. Of the 7th largest country in the world, the 4th largest Muslim country in the world, sending this email out to all its diplomats in embassies and constituencies that, look guys, if there's any way in which we can kind of fake support for the regime, if there's any way in which we can target those who are speaking out, and if there's any way in which we can further censor the diaspora on these platforms. Lastly, the mission may have specific suggestions which could be useful in the coming days to face. This has gone out. If you can see, it's an official document that's gone out to all the heads of missions. This is not normal.
Yeah.
This is literally textbook dictatorial types of comms.
All right, let's pick up this story now with Naomi Hussain. She's a professor of development studies at the University of London. Professor, it's good to have you with us. The Bangladeshi people are seeking justice. Will they get justice?
Well, thank you so much for following this story. There's no signs yet of that justice coming. The government doesn't seem to want to back down or to apologize or to hold anyone accountable for what's happened. I think they seem to be doubling down, in fact, on their argument that this is the opposition has incited this or even undertaken the violence. So, no, I don't think right now there's any sign of justice.
Can you give us a bigger picture of why you think these protests have turned so violent?
I think you said it in your intro, in fact, and I think we know this from protests all around the world. This is something I study all around the world, not just in Bangladesh. We know that on the whole, peaceful protests tend to get violent when the state forces come in and get heavy-handed, tear gas and, in this case, rifle pellets and other shoot-to-kill orders. This is really what triggered the violence. But before the state forces started using, arms on people, the ruling party's militia, the Bangladesh Chhatra League, started beating up students in and around the campuses before the police came in. So there's multiple layers of violence against the student protesters, and that's really what triggered the violence, as far as we can see. I should say, information is a bit limited still, and that's partly, in fact, largely to do with the government closing down the internet, preventing independent journalism or human rights defenders on the ground.
The government is blaming third parties for inciting this violence. It's gone ahead with banning one of the political parties. In your opinion, does it have credible evidence that the opposition parties were behind any of this violence?
I mean, again, we know from protests all around the world, when they get really violent, when they escalate, often it is opposition parties getting involved. But actually, we have not seen any evidence yet that that's the case in Bangladesh. The Minister for Information put out a list of assertions earlier today that he claims shows that the BNP and the Jamaat Islami, the opposition parties, were involved. But actually, there has been no evidence. We've not really seen anything at all. They arrested, of the people who've been arrested so far, something like 13% of the arrestees have some kind of affiliation with a party that is not the Awami League. But that's a pretty small number, and it doesn't say anything about any kind of concerted effort or any kind of organized program by the opposition parties to get involved with these protests. And there are good reasons why. I could just tell you what those are. One is that they're quite weak. The opposition parties mostly are in jail. The leader is Begum Khaleda Zia is very sick. She's under house arrest. They're pretty much a broken party anyway.
Yep.
And another reason is, the Awami League was doing so well at destroying their own legitimacy and their own rule. Why would they get involved?
Let me ask you this. There have been all of these arrests, and yet the government has released the leaders of the protest movement yesterday. I mean, briefly, if you can, are there signs that the government wants to de-escalate tensions here?
I mean, I think there's no doubt that they would like things to calm down and go away, but they don't also want to take responsibility for what has happened. I think they do want to de-escalate. The tone of their communications has been very, very much softer in the last couple of days than it was earlier on, a week ago or so. But as I say, they're not willing to relinquish power. They're not willing to hold anyone accountable. They're not willing to really apologize or fire any of the ministers or other officials who are in charge of this. So it's a weak effort.
Professor Naomi Hussain with the University of London. Professor, we appreciate your time and your analysis today. Thank you.
Thank you.